everybody. Welcome back to the Chronicles of the Range Monkey. I'm your host, Natalie, here with my personal development coach, Chris Bean. And today we're going to be establishing a roadmap to get to our goals.
I use Throom targets on the range for all the benefits of steel with none of the drawbacks. They're made in the USA too. Pick up a set to make your shooting more fun and effective.
Yeah, so really now we're into the meat and potatoes phase of like building a training plan to achieve your goal. So this is the plan that you're actually going to commit to, the amount of work, when, where, how, and why you're doing things to kind of meet the overarching goal. So can you tell me one more time what the goal is going to be?
Yes, I want to refine my draw to where I am consistently hitting a B8 target at 7 yards, 10 ring or better in 1.25 seconds, and make those shots at least 8 out of 10 times.
Excellent. And what's our timeline? We're thinking about a month, right?
About a month, yeah.
And,
And then,
and
yeah.
well, you just did something I found really important. So you can state the goal verbatim by memory now. So we're actually implanting that into our head. This is the goal. And that's just something you kind of need to say every time when you go into kind of do your dry fire, or every time, because now it's becoming less about you and more about the goal, you
Yes.
know? So that's super important. I'm really glad that you can do that. So
Yeah, me too. It felt good actually. I noticed that too. I was like, I didn't have to look at my paper that time.
we,
Baby
uh,
steps.
no, it's good. So we know we have the goal. Before we really get into building out what we're going to do, why is that goal important to you?
I feel like I need to almost prove it to myself that I can do that. That I am in this game. I am a credibility to other female shooters. I have earned my spot at this table. I know what I'm doing. I haven't I don't know, a lot of the range monkey stuff lately has been more taking classes and less about shooting,
Mhm.
um, which has been really good. It's probably been my favorite part, but I do miss getting out there and shooting and getting my shots, and feeling good about that. I've kinda lost a little bit of accuracy and a little bit of speed sitting in the classroom all the time, so it is very important to me that I hit this goal because I want to trust in my capabilities.
So that's really the summation of why it's important to you right there
Yep, I wanna trust in my
in
capabilities.
4 words. So that's good stuff. So let's revisit your schedule. You have Tuesdays, 10 a.m., 15 minutes of available time, Friday, 12 p.m., 15 minutes of available time, and Saturday, 30 minutes, with Saturday having some potential flux, but you're committing to do that as best you can this Saturday.
Yes.
Okay. So if we're going to frame it to what we're trying to achieve, there's going to be just a ton of repetitions of draw. Okay.
Mhm.
So we'll start with Tuesday. And what we're going to do is just kind of talk through what we plan to achieve in those sessions, and we will commit that to paper after we get done with this. But all of this needs to be committed to paper, because once you
Okay.
write it, and then what I would prefer you do is not type it up, write it down in your own hand, because then it becomes real. You
Okay.
know, there's no filter between what you're trying to manifest in the really world, in the really real world, and what you're actually thinking. Uh,
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
so Tuesday, and we already kind of talked. I think we talked on the last video about when you go in and you start your sessions. You kind of need to wipe the slate clean on what's going on in the really real world, and now you're in training space, practice space, 100% engaged, right?
Yep.
So I think probably on Tuesday in that 15-minute session, we're probably in a good spot to use like Laser Academy.
Okay.
So I would have to go and look at the targets there, but I'm sure they have a target that's either kind of 1/3 or smaller. You can go and kind of find what that is, or which one that would work the best for you, or one that's got kind of a B8-esque kind of feeling to it. And then you'll have to kind of size that in such a way that whatever space you have tends to lend itself to the 7 yards that we're really wanting to do. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, I believe in my Dry Fire Dojo, I have a place that I can go back 7 yards.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent, excellent.
Yeah. Yep. So
Okay.
I'm hoping that is gonna have to be something that I go step out, but
Okay. But even if we're close to that, I know they have some kind of scored circular target. I'm just not sure what it is offhand. So
yeah.
when we leave today, but I would do that session, 15 minutes, laser cartridge, and start baselining yourself with a par. So
Okay.
use a par time on your timer. And I would probably start with maybe a 2-second par. And
Okay.
again, using a target of the right size, use a 2-second par and start really kind of drilling down and articulating how clean are we getting in that 2. And then run it until you feel comfortable with it at 2. And
Okay.
then just start descending down 1/10 at a time. And how far you get is how far you get in that 15 minutes. So, but you do not want to descend until you are getting consistent hits at that time. Okay. And if 2 is too aggressive when we start, then try 2.25 or 2.5, whatever that number is. We need to start at the reasonable place. That's where you are right now today.
Yep.
Okay. And then just start going down 1/10 at a time. And what that'll do, each rep or each series of reps, if you're articulating the corrections that need to be made, if you start feeling kind of movement here, you start feeling your head move around there, you can correct it at that time. So you're not going from whatever the number is, 2 to 1.2, and because you'll just be throwing the gun out there because you haven't worked your way into it.
Right. Okay.
So I would almost dedicate the whole 15 minutes to that and whatever it is. So only descend when you're making quality hits that you can articulate at least a couple in a row that you know this method gets me that result. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I want to know if I can tell which direction this is going. On Tuesday, are we trying to focus on the timing and making sure that I'm progressing with the time, and then on the other days, we'll focus on progressing with, like, the accuracy, or
No, I think this is now we're doing both of these things at once.
okay. Okay.
So the goal of using Laser Academy is not to go faster. It's finding where is the ceiling now. So
Oh, okay.
you're using the target of like size that we will use for attainment of this goal. We're using a timer to measure where we are today and start very slowly, 1/10 at a time, figuring out how to cut out what we don't need. Not
Okay.
add anything, remove what we don't need.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's I never want to see you descend time at the sake of losing accuracy. For what we're doing, that will not work.
Okay.
So if you're going good rep, good rep, good rep, okay, shave a 10th and then say, okay, good rep, bad rep, good rep. Okay, so we need to stay here for a minute until we achieve consistency, because that's the other end of it, right? That's part of our goal, the consistent piece of it. Um, so the time is, for the most part, irrelevant. It's just an indicator of what can the task be done in with the level of accuracy that we said is required for the task. And the
Oh,
speed
okay.
will come. The speed will come as you kind of start working your way down. Because eventually, if you start doing descending pars, you're going to get to the point where it falls apart. And that's okay, because now we know where it falls apart.
Yeah.
So that's what happens a lot of time when people use descending pars, or they just use like a par time that's out of their wheelhouse.
Mhm.
They will do it, they will fail, and then they will never test that water ever again. They'll be like, all right, so 1, it all falls apart. I will never be going back to one town. So we want to like go from whatever, Tuville to Oneville, and at
Yep.
Oneville, we're like, yeah, that's not working out very well. All right, well then we don't go all the way back to 2. We go to maybe 1.5 and start working our way
Yeah.
down, figuring it out as we go along. That's how you build consistency in technique.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we've got kind of Tuesday laid out, right?
Yep.
That and the parameters, how we're going to do that makes sense. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about Friday. I think Friday, we need to be a little bit more aggressive on what we're using. And I don't want to rely on the laser all the time because I don't want you watching the laser appear on target. I need that to start translating to your sight speaking to you, not what's appearing on the target. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That makes sense.
So, and that's what happens a lot of times where people like look over their sights or they're waiting for hits. They're not really calling their shots. They're not reading their sights as things are happening. They're doing it after the fact. So we are not going to use a laser on Friday.
Okay.
What we are going to do is continue to do draws. And these will just kind of be recorded. So you'll use par times with your timer, very similar to what you were doing before with Laser Academy. But they don't have to be super strict from a speed perspective or super lenient. So whatever we believe is a reasonable par. So if your Monday or your Tuesday numbers tell you that 1.17 at a B8 at 21 feet is a comfortable pace for you, we'll set a par at 1.7. And this one you will be shooting at 1-inch squares or 1-inch circles.
Okay.
So
All right.
we are increasing the accuracy quotient, but we are somewhat relaxing the time standards. Does this make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So we're not going to use the laser on Friday. We will continue to work on drawing with a timer set at whatever the par time was on Tuesday.
Whatever you felt comfortable with
Yeah. And
at a
then
1-inch square or 1-inch circle. And to give you an idea, to kind of personalize this, like when I don't dry fire to alphas, I dry fire to 1-inch squares. And the reason I do that is when I go and shoot at speed, I've got all this immense playground to play with. And I've been working with this very, very small acceptable target. So I afford myself a little bit of ability to push a little faster because the technique has allowed me to do significantly more under my practice. I practice harder than any test would be. Does that
okay.
make
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that rocks.
So we've got Tuesday and Friday set up, and that would really be kind of that whole session on Friday for 15 minutes. 1-inch square. Time is not super relevant there. We want it to be reasonable. We want it to push you, but we don't want it to push you to the point that you're failing. The hit matters.
Right.
And on that one, there's going to be no laser. So you're going to have to really, really be engaged and watch your sights. Did that dot dip out of the 1-inch square when you pulled the trigger? Did you send it before the dot was in that 1-inch square? Those are things that you need to be very, very mindful of. All right. So then we've got Saturday that we need to kind of think through. So that Saturday, we've got a little bit more time. So what I think we really need to do is not be myopic about it all just being the draw. So we've got 2 days that we're dedicating almost 100% to the draw. And I want to be very careful that that's not all we're training.
Okay.
So what I would kind of do on Saturday would be something very similar to what we would see on Friday, but I would want multiple trigger pulls. Like, so instead of doing one, just draw one, like draw 3, draw 2, and you've got
Mm.
you've got a hammer gun, right? So you can
Yeah.
actually do multiple. And what's going to happen there, now you won't have recoil, obviously, in dry fire. But if you're being lazy on your grip earlier on in the week and you're being lazy on your grip in that session on the second or third double action pull, you'll probably see the gun starting to move around more than it should.
Yeah.
And you'll start seeing it kind of pull off. So that's really what we're trying to do, is tie all this stuff together in the real world of shooting on Saturday. So multiple trigger pulls, making sure you can actually get that dot exactly where you want it and keep it there under actuation of trigger.
Okay. Yeah. So
Multiple,
by Saturday, I should be able to take a multiple accurate, and we're going to have the timer there too, right?
yeah,
So
and
multiple accurate and quick, careful shots.
yeah, because what my hope is, on Tuesdays, you have a visual indicator of what's happening, and you're learning to kind of deal with the target you would normally see that you will test on. Okay. Friday, we're relaxing the time standard just a little bit in the beginning, but we're reducing the target size by a factor of probably 5. So we're significantly harder on the acceptable accuracy standpoint, however, a little bit relaxed on time. Now, then what you're doing on Saturday is kind of tying all that together to have it make sense in the really real world of shooting.
Okay.
Because the last thing I want to do is have you do all this stuff and have the laziest grip in the world because you're working on it in dry, and then we go to test this in live fire and your shooting's falling apart and it sets you back.
Yeah. So this first week, we are going to do all dry. And then,
Mhm.
like, are we going to continue to repeat this schedule, or are we going to like reassess at the end of this week and maybe
Yeah.
go to live fire?
Yeah. I think every week we assess what's happening. So this is the last part I'll put in this with the plan. If you have a notebook, I suggest you get a brand new one for this. You put the goal in it, you put your plan for the week, and you leave yourself notes to talk about exactly what's happening. So if you have particularly good reps, on say a Tuesday with Laser Academy, hey, I just 10 ringed Laser Academy 10 out of 10 times at X, whatever it is. Write that down. Own that. Own the success. If there's something that you saw, okay, I started seeing erratic behavior of my dot here, I need to do this to correct. Like,
Okay.
write it down. Like, this is what I need to do to correct it. And then every time you have a session, you're really writing this stuff down because you want to be involved in it. You're not just along for the ride, and you can drive it in such a way that anything that needs to change or anything that you want to celebrate, you're owning that from the jump.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Journaling this stuff, it sounds corny and a million people talk about it. Very few people do it.
Yeah.
Now, if you do it, it's a game changer, and you start learning how to drive your thoughts as it relates to shooting.
Yeah.
So we've got the first week kind of dialed up, and I think we reassess weekly what
I
needs
think
to
so
change.
too.
'Cause-
Yeah. Cause I mean, we're going to see different things to work on every week,
Mhm.
and we'll need to know how well the timeline is actually fitting in with the goal,
Yeah,
stuff
and the
like that. So I
practice
think
tells us
reassessing is good.
the practice tells us that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would start this a week, maybe 2 weeks in dry, just to get the feel for it. Then check your baseline in live and make sure it's translating, because if it's not, we're doing something wrong that we need to address. So, because at the culmination in a month of when we want this, we want you to have faith in the work you have put in to know it translates. So there's no test anxiety. There's no
Yeah.
attainment anxiety. You're like, okay, I've done this work. I know it works. I've proven it. Now I just have to execute. That's the end state. That's the end goal.
Yeah. Okay. I think this will get me there. I'm actually really excited to actually start working on this.
Now
Yeah.
this is good. It's good to have a formalized plan. And I
Yeah.
think you're going to see dramatic changes in who you are as a shooter. And it's not just about, okay, you'll be able to hit like a 10 ring. I think you'll see dramatic changes in your shooting overall. And then, well, once you learn the method, you can apply it to anything you do.
Right. Yeah, I've been reading a lot about the mental programs and stuff in with winning in mind, and I'm really excited to put those into practice. Uh, we've said it before that that we're very education based, and as much as it's fun to go out and dry fire and live fire and go to classes where we're shooting and stuff, the preparation and the journaling is at least what I'm hoping is the secret ingredient
Well,
to get me to where I want to be.
you know what's a great thing about that? Especially if you clearly address any deficiencies, you input your corrections and you celebrate the wins. If you start doing that religiously with how you shoot and how you're training, 2 years from now, if you run into a struggle or you see like this slump, you can literally go back and see what you did, how you did, what your numbers were. Because I talk to people all the time. So, well, I'm a good shooter. I'm a great shooter. I'm a bad shooter. Well, quantify that for me. Well, crickets. Like, well, tell me why. What's your draw to first shot? What's your reload? What's your bill drill? What's whatever?
That's what you said to me at the mingle when we met. I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm anything special," and you were like, "What's your draw to first shot, Natalie?"
But
I
that
think I said like 2.5 or something. You
and
just laughed
I
at
don't know
me.
if we can I don't know if we can say what I told you when you told me that, but how is it that I, a person that has relatively little experience with people that I run into, I don't shoot with people that I work with all the time,
Mhm.
but I know what their numbers are before they do. Hmm.
It's because you analyze all of this data and you watch people and you record it. Yeah, so I really want to put this into practice. I'm pretty excited.
It'll help.
So, yeah. So that's probably a good place for us to stop. I am really excited to continue taking this journey and thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next week.